Welcome back to Earth Station Trek, a show where we trek from the early days on ABC to the future on Paramount Plus and everywhere in between. I'm Charles Kelso, and it's my privilege to introduce the Earth Station Trek crew. Alan Seiler.
I'm not much of a crew.
You're all I need, Alan. But joining us tonight, we've got special guests, Nathan Laws of the 42 Cast. Welcome, Nathan.
Hello, thanks, Charles, and thank you for welcoming me on the show.
Yeah,
thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, and our friend from Dragon Trek Track, Nick Wright. Welcome back, Nick.
Hey, good to be back. How's everybody doing?
Oh, yeah. Great. How are you doing?
Not bad. I'm better now. Better now that I'm here with you fine folks.
Sweet.
Yeah, and we're doing a little bit of a special show tonight. We're going to be doing a little roundtable discussion about the state of the legacy sci-fi franchises, because several of them have had big news and not overwhelmingly positive news lately.
Yeah. So at the moment, I mean, the thing that sort of brought this idea to my head was that there are so many of our beloved legacy sci-fi franchises that are just not moving forward at the moment. We know that we have 2 more seasons of a season and a half technically of Strange New Worlds coming up, plus 1 season of Starfleet Academy. But beyond that, we have no idea what is going to happen with Trek. Doctor Who at the moment is on indefinite hiatus. Both the Stargate and the Buffy relaunches, which were fully greenlit, then got canceled before work ever started on either one of them. Star Wars doesn't seem to know what the hell it wants to do. And, it's all just kind of like in a place where everything is indefinite. So we're going to talk about all those different things and possibilities and directions and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I guess first off, for Nick and Nathan, we're on here talking about Star Trek every week, and everyone knows that Alan has a Doctor Who podcast and is big in Doctor Who fandom. I mean, where do you guys come from? Nick, I know you're heavily involved with the Dragon Trek Track.
Yes. I've been a Star Trek fan since the early 90s. I have kind of expanded my coverage to a lot of different shows that are also kind of either being touched on or being promised to us or not really. Like Buffy was something I didn't catch Buffy until a little bit later on when I had a chance to watch it when the streaming era came around. But I enjoyed that, and I enjoyed like X-Files, and I enjoyed Quantum Leap was a big one. That's one we didn't even talk about recently, but we had a reboot of Quantum Leap. Lasted for 2 seasons from 2022 to 2024. Yes. And it was really good, but it was a network show, and like they were giving us like 20-something episode seasons. It was really like going back in time. It was kind of like, well, this can't last, and of course it didn't.
It's your lack of confidence that killed me.
But
I mean, it did. I just was surprised that it was picked up for a 2nd season.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there was of course, a bunch of accusations of it being too woke and everything, but I was very surprised that like it was on a major network, on like a regular over-the-air network, not on streaming or anything, and it was given that much room to work with, and then they're like, we're done.
Well, you could tell there was a lack of confidence in the second season, because the second season was a half season. The first one was a 22 episode season, and then it was a 13 episode second season. So they were dialing it back a little bit.
Yeah. Good point.
Yeah, and then Nathan, where do you come from fandom wise? Where do you lie?
Okay, so I do not remember a time when I had not seen original Star Trek or Star Wars. Those two things, I must have been so young, because when I was growing up, like original Star Wars was shown weekday afternoons, Monday through Friday. So, or original Star Trek, so I had those episodes memorized before Next Gen ever came out. I was 7 when Next Gen came out, and before Next Gen even came out, I knew all of original Trek backwards and forwards. Star Wars, knew the 3 Star Wars movies. I was introduced to Doctor Who when I was 5, and I've been a Doctor Who fan ever since also. So those 3 are sort of like the cornerstones of my fandoms, and from there I've just gone on to Stargate, and pretty much all the ones you've mentioned. The only one that isn't like a thing for me, and that's because of my local area, I didn't have a UPN or CW station, was Buffy. I never saw Buffy until I was much older. And I think a lot of my contemporaries who got into Buffy because they were teens and they watched it as teens, I saw it as a 20-something and I was like, ooh, this is embarrassing. Like, this is so like, I never got into Buffy like a lot of people did.
How dare you? I will say that I
Seems
wasn't
weird about this Joss Whedon guy. I don't know.
well, and we found out later that yes, indeed. But you know, that's interesting because I didn't get into Buffy at the beginning. It wasn't until I like met some people and they were like, "Hey, we're going to go to a viewing party for the beginning of Buffy season 5," and I came in. They're like, "Why don't you come with us?" And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know squat about Buffy, but sure, I'll come in." And there was like 40 people at this thing, and it was so big, and it was really fun. And it was more this group of people that I got kind of involved in. But then I got super invested in the show. So seasons 5, 6, and 7 are like my sweet spot for Buffy. I've gone back and watched the earlier things. But those last 3 seasons of Buffy, man, are so good. I'm sorry you didn't make it that far, Nathan.
It's fine.
So, Charles, what are some of your things other than Star Trek? We all know about your Star Trek love.
Yeah,
what else is on your radar?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of the original Star Wars movies. I have been since I was a kid. I love Planet of the Apes. Anything with sci-fi that came out in the 90s or earlier, I was big into. I was born in 1980, so the 90s was a huge sci-fi time for me because you had really great current sci-fi shows and also like the Sci-Fi Channel and so forth playing reruns of things like Time Tunnel, Land of the Lost, and Lost in Space. It's just a smorgasbord. And so that's like anything sci-fi. If it had a ray gun or a robot in it, I was watching it growing up.
Yeah. And, you know, that's an interesting one that you mentioned there. Though they're both 2 of them there. Land of the Lost was one that has been rebooted a couple of times, once on television, and then once about 12, 15 years ago, that big budget film that Will Ferrell was behind.
Yeah, I remember.
And it was, I mean, from the production angle, that movie was spectacular. That's what you always wanted Land of the Lost to look like. The story was absolute trash.
Yes.
And it completely...
The clue was that Will Ferrell was in it.
Well, exactly. It
the split stack looked great.
Yeah. The dinosaurs look great. The land looked great. But it so completely missed the mark of what Land of the Lost is and should be. And similarly, you also mentioned Lost in Space, which everybody knows if they listen to this show, how much I love that show because I grew up. I'm the oldest one here, of course, and I grew up watching Lost in Space, and that modern series, which was like 10 years ago, maybe, you know, was successful enough that it lasted for 3 seasons, I think it was. And I just could not get into it because it was like Lost in Space in name only. Like it used the series name and it used some character names, but everything else was so different. And I tried to see it for what it is, for what it was trying to be, and not what I was wanting it to be. But I just could not, even on that level, I just couldn't get into it. So the question is, can legacy sci-fi that we love, that we grew up on, can it exist in the same way that it did when it first came into being? Like, we know that Star Trek has morphed and shifted many, 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 many times over the years. But the thing about Star Trek is that it is a true franchise. It is made up of a series of series, and every series can have its own identity. So each series can morph with the times, can be something different that reflects the time in which it's made. Doctor Who is one show. It did have that 15-year break in the middle, but it basically picked up where it left off. And even in the 20 years of the modern series, it has changed numerous times, but it's still one show. So it doesn't have, like, you can't introduce a whole new setting, a whole new cast, a whole new, well, it can, but it's not the same model that Star Trek is. So how does legacy sci-fi continue? How does it exist now? That's a big open-ended question.
It is. Well, I would like to start off with Lost in Space because, like you said, and you know, I trust you when you say you're a little bit older than me. I'm about the same age as Charles. I was born in '79. So
I was born in '80, so we're all like,
there we go. Older millennials,
right
Gen X, Xennial club here. All right. So I saw a little bits and pieces of Lost in Space when I was a kid, and I saw it on like I guess it was on Nick at Night or something like that. And I was like, okay, this is cool and all. I never really got into it, but I really liked the Netflix one that came out about 10 years ago now. That one was the first time that I really got into Lost in Space as a property. And then I started to look back and say, oh, okay, this is where this came from. That's how it was back in the day. That's really cool. So I do think that it is possible to reinvent these for newer generations. It just has to be done right. And I'm sorry that it didn't really connect with you there, but maybe that was because I don't know, you had some specific expectations about it that were not being met.
Maybe.
I want to jump in on. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, you go right ahead. I
want to jump in on the Lost in Space thing because I probably saw more than a little bit when I was a kid, but I certainly didn't watch it end to end. It wasn't like Star Trek was for me. It was something that was on a cable channel. It was on the Family Channel when I was growing up, and every once in a while I'd watch an episode or whatever. I very quickly learned that if it was a black and white episode, it was going to be a good one. If it was a color one, it wasn't going to be a good one. Before my dad even took, because my dad, when he found out I was watching, he was like, well, the black and white ones are the good ones. I'm like, yeah, I know, right? But
it's like Gilligan's Island.
Wow.
So but to me, so here's the thing, and this is where we get into the diciness of this problem. What does Lost in Space mean to you? Because I saw it and I had the same thought that Nick did, that this was a great way of modernizing it while keeping the core. Because to me, what makes Lost in Space different from other sci-fi shows is it's about a family.
Yes.
And the family dynamic stayed. It was, I mean, I shouldn't say it's not the same family dynamic, but it is the fact that it was about family at its core remained true in the Netflix series. So yeah, all the other details changed. You know, there were characters that had names that were the names from the other show, and you know, the robot was completely different, you know, all that stuff was different, but they kept that sort of unique idea that Lost in Space is a show about a family that is lost in space. And so to me, I thought the Netflix show was great because I was like, wow, it's such a great modernization of this concept. But like I said, I was never big into the original show. I saw it a little bit here and there, but it was not like a huge fandom kind of thing for me.
I think for me, I think I would have accepted pretty much anything that show had given me, except that its starting point was that, yes, it is still about a family, but it was a fractured family. There was, it was all super angsty. And I'm like, every show does that. Why do we have to do that again for this? And I know that that's like where modern drama starts, you know, but I was like, oh my God, I just don't need like the Robinsons to be estranged from each other and all that stuff, you know. So I think that was a big hurdle for me that I did not quite jump over.
Okay, so bringing this back to Star Trek, because this is the discussion that I have with people sometimes that are like, Star Trek's got to be hopeful, like no Section 31, no dark you know, like it's got to be all hope, 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 hope. And this is my point. I don't ever want a Star Trek series that's just relentless grim all the time. But to me, when you're telling a story, you have to have an arc, right? Like there has to be a starting point and there has to be a journey that you get through. So I forget who it was, but there was a writer that proposed an idea of like a broken Federation in the future. This was before New Trek came out, that this was one of the ideas that was circulating, and that was a ship that would have to find like a cure for a plague or something. And they were going through, it was, you know, but it was like the Federation was broken. Everything was really bad. And the idea was going to be, they were going to discover the ideals of the Federation as they went out into space. And I was like, that's a great idea for a show to be. And so through like Lost in Space, I don't know if you got through all 3 seasons of the Netflix show, but it went on an arc. Like the family came. So like many families do, especially when there's teenagers involved, they kind of broke apart. They were under stressful conditions. There were bad things happening. They griped with each other. But by the end of the series, they're all in a good place. They've come together stronger than they ever were before. And so to me, that felt like a satisfying narrative of, you know, that they had difficulties, but they came together. And that's something that's satisfying to me. And I like that.
Well, and I will say in my defense, I have intended. I have never done it, but I have intended to go back and watch it from the beginning again and give it another fair chance. And I saw like maybe a season and a half of it, but I don't know. There were things about it that I loved, like the new design of the ship. I thought was beautiful. And I don't know, it had a lot of potential, and I was that close to really being on board with it. So I will give it another chance, I promise.
Well, now that everything else is out of production, you're going to have plenty of time to catch up with other stuff.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, something they do when they adapt these old episodic TV shows into prestige dramas, they translate them oftentimes into shorter seasons, serialized seasons, and then they feel the need to tell a story over the course of it. So, I mean, in a lot of cases, you're starting with that, like with Lost in Space, a fractured family, or with Discovery, like the Klingon War, and they're building towards something. But I mean, it raises the point, though. I mean, over the last 10 years, there's been a real push to turn these franchises into like prestige dramas. And so we get fewer episodes, we get longer gaps between seasons, and we get more of these serialized storytelling. I mean, do you think that's working? I mean, and they're putting a lot of money into these things.
It's time to get on my soapbox because I have been the lone voice shouting in the wilderness that this idea that fewer episodes is better is a bad idea. You know, for years, people were telling me that too. It's like, if they'd only cut down the number of episodes and the quality would increase and everything would be better. And we've seen that that's not true. Even if they only give us a 6-episode season, 8, 10, whatever, you know, that's usually the streaming shows are either 6, 8, or 10, right? It's like, even if you get those, you know, if the writers are phoning it in, they're phoning it in. And then there's even less chance, though, for them to hit it, you know, because they only got their 6 episodes or whatever. Or my favorite is the 6 episodes where they just assume they're going to get a season 2. So it just ends abruptly. And it's like, well, we're going to get a season 2. And then it's like, no, your show ended because you didn't make your 6 episodes count, you know? And so that's the thing. I feel like this idea is not true. You know, and in fact, the episodes that people are calling filler in the old 22 to 26 episode seasons are not as easily like jettisoned, I think, as people say they are, because one of the things that we hear a lot now about streaming shows is I never really get into the characters, you know, like I don't really get the characters, you know, it's hard, you know, there's side characters that never get any development and stuff like that, looking at you, Discovery. And so, you know, who can name the bridge crew on the Discovery? I don't know.
I can. Nobody else can, but I can.
Yeah, no, I know, because there's so many interesting looking characters that we just, you know, kind of name check and we don't do anything. But anyway, my point is those filler episodes were usually the character episodes, right? Exactly. So yeah, you can do your rewatch, you know, where we'll skip this episode. You know, I used to have friends that would recommend crap like that, and I was always like, I don't do that. Like, if I'm going to watch a show, I'm going to watch every episode. I'm not going to skip the ones you say don't count, because those usually contain character stuff. And so, yeah, I think we're losing that, which I think is one of the reasons why shows are so disposable now. People, you know, won't, you know, keep on with them even if they watch the first season. Maybe they don't watch seasons 2 or 3 because they don't engage.
I don't know that we're losing that aspect so much. I think that there are, at least in some cases, it comes to the forefront to the point of the actual story taking a back seat.
That's the other problem.
I have found that in modern Doctor Who. I have found that on some of the modern Star Treks, where you put so much emphasis, and especially in Doctor Who, you put so much emphasis on the main character, their background, their family history, their living conditions, their dating life, their job, that you don't have as much time to tell an actual good sci-fi story.
Right.
And various seasons of modern Doctor Who have been better than others on that kind of thing. I thought series 9 was much better because it was just the Doctor and his companion traveling around the universe and having adventures. And I'm like, thankfully, we're back to where I like my Doctor Who, you know? I've got so many hangups.
See, it's interesting to me, Alan, because your position on Lost in Space is my position on Doctor Who since 2005.
There you go.
I have never been, I tried. I've tried to get into it, and to me it's so different. Like, yes, it says it's a continuation, but the ethos of the show, like the core of the show, is no longer. So yeah, there's trappings, there's a TARDIS, there's a guy who calls himself the Doctor that regenerates, but it's just the trappings to me, and like the show is not the show anymore. So to me it's because I had to ask myself after 4 years of it, was, if this show wasn't called Doctor Who, would I be watching it? And I was like, actually, I wouldn't be. Like I don't like this show. I stopped watching it, and that's the. No. I've kept in touch. You know, I know what's happening with it, but I don't watch it anymore.
I will say that there were times when I had that same struggle. You know, and I do watch it just because it's Doctor Who, but also because I do lots of panels at Dragon Con, and I was running a Doctor Who convention for a while. So it's kind of my job to, you know, but, you know, and I will watch it no matter what. But there have been times when I'm like, oh, I'm struggling to find the core of the show that I love in what they're showing me at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, and sort of to extend that a little bit, and I'm going to have a point in a little bit, but Strange New Worlds, which is supposed to be the, hey, all you original series Star Trek fans, this is the show for you.
Right.
I don't hate the Strange. I just want to put that out there. I actually do enjoy watching Strange New Worlds. It's not a show that I dislike watching, but my struggle with Strange New Worlds is this idea that it's supposed to be for the original Trek fans, because one, we almost never see a Strange New World. So that's getting to the point that you talked about, Alan, with, you know, it's you know, so much about the characters that we don't actually do the exploring thing, which is supposed to be the thing that the show.
You must have watched some of our recent episodes, because we have talked about that a lot.
That's my soapbox.
There you go.
So but also this weird obsession with, we've developed all these really cool like characters for Pike's crew, and let's not pay attention to them. Let's pay attention to Kirk's crew and like try to like shoehorn them in as much as possible. And I'm just like pulling my hair out. Like, it's not even about the characters of the show. It's about the characters from another show that they want to make it about. And I'm just so annoyed by it because of that. I still like it. I still enjoy most of the episodes, but I'm just like, I like Pike's crew. Can we focus on them? Like more Ortegas, you know, more Lon, you know?
Oh, I'm telling you.
And those are two really good points that I think we should touch on. Is one, a lot of these shows will write the character moments and then fill in plot in between. Doctor Who has done it a lot. Star Trek has done it a lot. Yeah. But then also it's the, like you said, the shoehorning in of nostalgia bait, which sometimes is used well and sometimes not, but at the expense at a lot of times of the show. And is the point of bringing these franchises back to lure us back with the nostalgia bait? And is that a strategy that they should be pursuing? It seems like there's I don't know.
Is that right? What audience are they gearing these shows towards?
Right.
So let me talk to you about streaming services. Everybody has one now. Sometimes they have two or three. Right. And so they've taken so back in the Enterprise days, right? Star Trek Enterprise or just Enterprise, Braga made a comment that will live forever in infamy, that he didn't need the original fans because they'd get in so many new fans that they wouldn't need the original fans. Right. Well, this is the opposite mentality. This is the, as long as we slap a name of a franchise on this, the fans will watch it. And so that will fund our streaming service. And so that's why, in my opinion, a lot of the Star Trek content has been so uneven, because even though I've overall liked New Trek, it is very uneven. And I think it's because they just feel like this is what's paying for Paramount Plus, right? We're originally CBS All Access, now Paramount Plus is Star Trek. And so we got to keep Star Trek content on there, you know, bam, 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 so that people come in and watch it, and as long as we put Star Trek on it, they're watch it. And that's been kind of my struggle there, is why I'm not as upset as many people are that they're going to go forward with another, you know, the rumor is Paramount's going to create a Star Trek Studios that will be like how DC, you know, Warner does DC Studios and all that. And there will be movies and shows all in-house, all, you know, done. And I'm like, I am fine with them taking a break and thinking about a plan, a strategy, rather than just, hey, we had an idea for Star Trek 90210. Let's just greenlight that as a series. And it's kind of like, okay, I mean, I think that maybe you should have baked that one a little bit more, you know, and had a little bit more behind it. You know?
Yeah,
It is a pretty good show, though.
Not that there wasn't stuff that was good about it, but it was mostly kind of like, okay, this is like a CW show, right? That's just in space. So, I mean, it's kind of, I would like them to think about it a bit. And so to me, it's okay if it's a year or two without Trek.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. Nick, you got some thoughts? Because I think we've kind of run right over you.
Yeah, that's okay. Well, yeah, I think it is interesting. Somebody pointed out it is the first time in 63 years that there's not been Doctor Who or Star Trek in production actively. So Doctor Who started in 1963, and when Doctor Who was not around, Star Trek was on.
Yeah.
And then vice versa. And then like now we're at a point where neither of these franchises are moving forward. And that was kind of how I felt about Doctor Who. It's like, well, maybe it needs to take a year or two and have a bit of a breath. I did enjoy Starfleet Academy. I feel like that if you don't go into it expecting something like everything else you've already seen in the Star Trek universe, and go expecting a specific kind of story, that's actually what you're going to get. You're going to get more relationship stuff, more like, oh, this is how his relationship with his mother, and he's trying to find her, and like they're growing up together and bringing the Federation back. I almost wondered if it maybe bent over backwards a little bit too far trying to get the old fans, especially with the focus on Cisco, that one episode.
Right.
But overall, I thought it had a lot of potential, and I'm interested to see what happens with season 2, but I'm afraid they're going to do what they did with Prodigy and send it off either to Netflix to die on an island, or they're going to send it somewhere else. And I'm worried maybe we won't get to see it.
I worry about that myself. Okay, let me get some comments because we've got a stack of them. We're going to start off with our friend Bill, who says he loves the 42 cast.
Hey, glad to hear it.
He also says that my earliest sci-fi around age 4, around 1962, was Astro Boy and Space Angel, which was dreamlike, he says. And then around
lucky to get into anime at age 4 in 1962. That's wild.
Yeah,
that's wild. I didn't get into it too much later, and I was in the 90s.
Yeah, he says around 66 or 67, I talked my parents into letting me take a nap to watch Star Trek on a school night. Nomad gave me nightmares, and my parents didn't let me watch for a few years. Matt Sweatman, hi Matt, says that he liked the Land of the Lost movie with Will Ferrell. I'm glad you did. That's awesome. Let's see. Bill says, in the new Lost in Space, I wanted the Smith twins to cut their hair to match, put on identical clothes, and sneak in onto the colony ship together. All right. So I got a few here from Michael Scott. He says, I think Star Trek is almost uniquely unqualified for serialization. Plot threads that run through the season are fine, but otherwise episodic is best. And I'm going to come back to Matt one, but Michael continues by saying, conversely, I think Doctor Who should go in the reverse direction and return to half-hour serialized stories. Talk about popcorn, binge-watching entertainment. People would eat it up. Well, and that's a thing to discuss. Will they? Is that so different from the modern TV landscape that it would not find an audience that way? But he also says, oh no, sorry, this is Matt Sweatman. Everybody has a streaming service, some even 2 or 3. I cannot fathom only having 3 streamings. I think he means studios and networks all have 1 or maybe 2 streaming services. So
we finally got that a la carte cable television that we were looking for so hard.
Right.
Now we're all broke.
Now you got to pay your Disney bill. You got to pay your HBO bill. You got to pay your Netflix bill.
And now they're all losing money, just like I predicted on my show, like in episode 16, a long time ago, 10 years ago.
Yeah. So I want to talk just briefly. I don't know how much y'all have to put in on this, but we had 2 very, very high profile announcements that came out in the past year. One was that a Buffy reboot was going to be moving forward. And this is a biggie because Sarah Michelle has not necessarily distanced herself from Buffy, but she didn't want it to be like her albatross. She didn't want it to be anchored to her. And getting her back on board And she loves Buffy. She loves the series. She loves that character, but she didn't ever want to be beholden to it. Getting her back on board for this reboot was huge. And she got in, and I think if I remember rightly, it was Chloe Zhao who was going to be directing. And she was like, the script was amazing and everything was a go. And then all of a sudden it wasn't. And then also Stargate. They have been pushing for a Stargate reboot for years now. And every 2 or 3 years, they'll start talking about, hey, y'all, we're going to reboot Stargate. And then it goes nowhere. But this time, it got greenlit. It got actually, honest to God, greenlit. And they made big press announcements. And there was all this promo going on for it. And it was a big deal. And then Amazon's like, no, we're not going to do it. Screw you. We're not going to do it. What is going on in the sci-fi world right now that things get that far on the table and then just get yanked?
There's probably some momentum, and when it comes to having name recognition, it's like, oh, well, this project, this is something that a lot of people know, like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It's, there was the series, and then there was the spin-offs, but before that, there was the movie. It's a pretty big franchise, and even big, like, muckety mucks, the big execs, they know, oh, that's Buffy the Vampire Slayer. We could probably make a little bank off of that. But then I think when they get into it, then they realize, no, wait a minute, they're trying to do a show that's actually like very honest and appreciating and moving forward the ideas of the original product. It's like, I just wanted to make a little money and move on. I think it's fun, kind of like what we did see with Masters of the Universe recently, because like E-Man, like, of course that was based on a toy, so you can't really get too heavy into it. You can, a lot of us did, but they really want to just make a big movie and move on. They want to get their money and then be done with it. They don't want to make these long commitments to shows that people are going to put a lot of hard work into and a lot of love into and appreciate for years to come.
I think this isn't as weird as people think it is. We just don't hear about it normally because shows make pilots all the time and they get canned before we ever see them all the time. Yes. The problem is in the studios announcing it before they get a pilot and can judge it. And that is, I think, the studio is trying to, they're hoping that it will give them some cachet or something by announcing it until they see it. Now, I take a slightly different stance. So, than Nick does, because I know people were excited either because Sarah Michelle Gellar was attached to Buffy, and the writer whose name escapes me that was going to be the head on Stargate. He had worked on Stargate Universe.
Yeah, Martin Giro.
Martin Giro. And so, people were getting excited about that. And so my first point is, actors want to work, right? So I don't take anything actors say, oh, it was great, it was wonderful, and they're going to give me $1 million. Yeah, I know. Okay. The other thing is, Martin Giro worked on Stargate Universe, which was almost unwatchably bad. So even if it accepted the continuity of Stargate, that doesn't mean we don't know. The execs saw whatever he was working on, and they didn't say, because people are changing this to say it was because it acknowledged continuity. No, his original statement said it was going to acknowledge continuity. So they wouldn't have let him make that original statement if that was the problem. It was, we think it will exclude new people from coming in. So whatever he was doing was so fan wanky that they were like, this is going to be something that only hardcore Stargate fans are going to want to watch. And we don't want that. So to me, it's fair. It's like everybody wants the Batgirl movie, right? And I'm like, but yet the news coming from people who saw test screenings of it was that it was like a bad CW pilot. And so I'm sure if people actually saw that Batgirl movie, they would be like, ugh. But because it's something we can't see, everybody's like, oh my God, it was this unsung brilliant epic that Warner Brothers stole from us. So I think the fan reaction, especially with the Stargate, because I haven't seen a huge backlash with the Buffy one, but maybe that's just because I'm not in Buffy circles. But with Stargate, this petition and everything, I'm like, it's positively unhinged, because I bet if you get that show, then you're going to start complaining that it's not the show that you want it to be. And it's like they're spending all this effort on it. Like, if we start seeing scripts And we're like, wow, that's actually like a really good script. Why'd they do that? That's a different thing. But just on the fact that it's a guy who worked on the original franchise and, you know, the studio pulled it, that doesn't mean it was going to be like the greatest Stargate epic ever. And guess what, people? MGM or Amazon bought MGM for a reason. It was James Bond and Stargate. Those are the two things they're getting out of MGM. So they're going to make something Stargate. It might take another year or two, but there's going to be new Stargate content. It's not like it was this or nothing.
I agree with that 100%. I think that is the two things that they invested in. And, you know, and James Bond has been a continuing franchise for a long time. Stargate has been dead for quite a while. I mean, at least when Doctor Who was off the air for those 15 years, there was still activity. There were comics and novels and audio dramas with the original cast and all this stuff that was happening. I don't know any of that stuff with Stargate. So
there have been comics.
I think the big thing with Stargate is that there's been a lot of apprehension over the years of whether if it came back, if it would be a continuation of the television franchise, or if it would be a reboot or a continuation of the original film.
Yes.
And the fact that we were getting some of the old guard from the franchise, and Martin Giro has, you know, he worked on Atlantis and Universe, and he's gone on to have quite a career. I think he was a showrunner on Quantum Leap, the reboot. But the fact that he was intending to continue that universe, but from his own statements, planning to open it up to new fans, and not something that you'd have to see the old show to watch. But I think a lot of fans have wanted a continuation specifically of the television universe that we all watched for 18 seasons or something like that.
Yeah.
But and you're right, there probably will be Stargate of some kind, but it's just the question I think that has fans really upset is it going to be a continuation of our television franchise? Because it seems like we almost got that and then it was snatched away. And we can get anything from Stargate now. It could be very well be a reboot, or it could be, I mean, they could bring back Kurt Russell if they wanted to. He's doing TV shows now. He's in a Godzilla TV show, so it's not impossible.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, I might be cynical, but here's the thing, you know, since I've lived long enough growing up the same time you guys did, Charles and Nick, that I've seen so many things come back, you know, from when I was younger. And I'm like, just because we have content that's new for this series doesn't mean it's content. And so I would much rather things be more thought out, just so that, you know, because they're questions they have to wrestle with, right? Like, is it a continuation? Is it a reboot? But also, what are the core elements of that thing? Because I think a lot of these studios don't know. Right. Like, I think that, you know, like Star Trek and Star Wars are kind of blessed that they're getting a lot of new things, so they can try lots of different things all at the same time. But most everything else, they get their one shot of a new thing. Right. You know, like Firefly is coming back as a cartoon. You know, will the Firefly cartoon satisfy the people who have been salivating for Firefly for 20 years? Or will the fans all take to the internet as soon as it airs and be like, that's not my Firefly? I don't know. We're going to have to see, right?
Yeah, right. Probably both.
Right. Oh, yeah. In equal measure, I'm sure.
But yeah, my thing is, just because we get content, it doesn't mean it's going to be good content. And I want good content.
Sure.
And that's my fear is, I mean, Doctor Who's another great example, because it's like I've heard people say at conventions, you know, it's in the hands of where it belongs with a hardcore fan. And I'm like, I'm not sure I want a hardcore fan running these shows, because a lot of times they have these fanish ideas. They can, you know, Russell T Davies, when he was 6 watching Doctor Who, was like, wouldn't it be cool if, you know, this happened and Moffat's the same. And it's like, I don't want you putting in these half-baked ideas you had when you were a little kid, you know, and throwing that into a series. I want somebody who respects the show. Yes. Or the franchise, but isn't necessarily steeped in a specific lore or whatever. Like, I think is it Tony Gilroy, I think, who did Andor for Star Wars? Perfect example. Somebody who respects Star Wars, but did something that's never been done in Star Wars before. Yeah. You know, and that's the kind of people I want making the new content for these franchises.
Yeah. I don't want somebody coming in who has absolutely no idea what Doctor Who is. You know, but I don't, you know, bringing Russell T Davies back the second time was the dumbest move they ever made. And I think it was wrong. And it did damage to the franchise. Anyway, that's beside the point. But, you know, you want somebody who understands what Doctor Who is, but also has a different vision for what it can be. Now, that can go either way. That can be good, or that can be disastrous. You never know. And we kind of got that at the end of the original series when his name just went out of my head. Andrew Cartmel took over, and he both knew Doctor Who, but also had very different ideas about what Doctor Who could be. And some people don't like that. I love that. I thought it felt fresh, and it felt like there was a new direction and a new energy for the show, but it lost viewers and it finally got canceled and blah, blah, blah. So, you know, just because you have new blood doesn't mean it's going to be good blood.
Mm-hmm. Hey, grab this comment from Mark Hefferman real quick, because that's something that I wanted to touch on.
Yeah, just about to. Mark says, hi, Mark. Do you think one of the challenges is that Gen Z is looking for franchises that they can call their own? That's a good point. Look at Obsession, Project Hail Mary, and Backdoors making bank at the box office while legacy properties struggle. And that also kind of brings to mind Expanse. Which and you know, one of Chuck's favorite shows, what you call it?
Mankind.
For All Mankind. Those are things that I think have found their own audience.
Right.
So, and that's the kind of thing that I was thinking about when I'm thinking, how does legacy sci-fi exist, you know, generations down the road when people are looking for their own thing?
Yeah, and it was big news when Backrooms came out, and the second, I think it was like Mandalorian's second weekend, and Backrooms beat it in the second week, which for a Star Wars movie would be unthinkable 20 years ago. But I saw Kane Parsons being interviewed, and they were asking him, like, what big franchise would you want to take over? And he was like, no. And I think there is quite a bit of that kind of sentiment with people of his generation. He's 20 years old, where they just don't have the attraction because they didn't grow up with these old franchises like we did.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hesitate to draw this line because I have been at cons where teenagers are telling me how much they like black and white Doctor Who. I have my own child who I struggled to get to watch anything that I was trying to get her on Doctor Who, Star Wars, anything. And one day I happened to be watching original Star Trek for myself. And suddenly the iPad went down and she was watching it with me. And I'm like, wait, do you like this? And she's like, yeah, I like this. And I'm like, oh, yeah. So we've now been watching through Star Trek for years, going in chronological release order, and we're just about to start new Trek. But, you know, that's the thing. And so like original Star Trek was what got her into science fiction, not any of the more recent stuff that I was trying to show her to get her to watch stuff. So I don't think it's as black. I keep hearing that as received wisdom. Kids won't watch any of this stuff. You know, it's got to be edgy. It's got to be fast cuts. It's got to be the modern stuff. And that's what's going to get them into it. And I think that's fine for new things. But I'm like, maybe we shouldn't mess with the formulas that have been making these series popular, you know, because as much time has passed between original series and Next Gen, for instance, taking Star Trek, there is so much in Next Gen that is, you know, creative DNA from the original Trek, right? Production values increased, you know, and they did do some things that like original Trek wouldn't have done. But I feel like there was more in that 90s era that pulled back to original Trek than like, say, new Trek pulls from 90s Trek. They'll pull details, names, things like that, but not style. Not the way that the episodes go. And so I feel like maybe we should try to look back at those things and say, maybe we just need what worked before, but with new stories, you know, like things that speak to the modern, like the situations going on right now, you know, the things in our world, because that's what Star Trek does, right? But still are told in the same way we used to tell stories. And I don't think it's as bad an idea as people think it is.
One thing that we have talked about on our show, I'll get to you, Nick, in just 1 second. One thing that we have talked about on our show is that none of the new Star Treks have really introduced any new elements that have equaled the Klingons, the Romulans, the Borg, you know, all those things. They're either using those again, or if they come up with a new villain, it's a one season thing and they're gone. And
what magic Kelpians that blow up dilithium crystals don't do it for you?
They do, but not in the same way. There's nothing that really makes this era have an identity that's unique to itself.
Right.
Okay, Nick, I'm sorry. You go right ahead.
Well, before I go to what I was going to talk about, the Voyager did that with the Kazon back in the day.
Yeah.
Like they were already trying to reinvent the Klingons and capture that spark again. But I was going to say, I completely agree with Nathan as far as like the kids these days. Like they have access to everything. They're not going to just pick one specific thing that people want to force feed them and latch onto that. And Backrooms is actually a perfect example of that, because it's actually set like in the 90s. Like VHS cameras, handheld cameras are a big thing about it. It's based on a picture of an old office building that was floating around like I think 4chan back in like the early 2000s, and people just iterated on that story and made creepypastas out of it. And so like there's definitely a lot of opportunity there. You just have to tell the right story. And I think that the other thing I wanted to mention was, you mentioned The Expanse is kind of tapping into that. Well, here's a story that's similar to, the Star Treks and everything else that we grew up on, but it's got its own thing going on. What would that series have done if it was called Star Trek: The Expanse?
Yeah, exactly. Does it carry baggage if you put that label on it, which is, of course, what was happening with Enterprise. They didn't want the baggage. And then seasons 3 and 4, they're like, you know what? Maybe people aren't watching because it's not Star Trek, and they slapped it back on.
It's Star Trek, by the way.
Right.
There's another point that I want to make. This is the problem that we're wrestling with is a problem that comics solved years ago, right? Because comics, like Marvel Comics, DC Comics, the long-running comics companies have had characters that have been in continuous production since the 60s, in some cases even before that. And so you wrestle with the question of, how do we continue to tell stories about this character that pay off the legacy of this character while also making it accessible to somebody who this might be their very first issue? And I feel like TV needs that. I know it's, people in TV and film look down on comics. They might mine it for IP, but they don't think of comics as like a legitimate like art form, and a large, I mean, obviously I'm casting a wide brush. I'm sure there are individuals, but as a whole, the industry doesn't. But I think that they really need to look at what comics are doing. The reason why comics have survived so long is that they figure out what are the few things that somebody needs to know in that issue that will tell them what they need to know, and so that's what they need. And that's what they need to figure out is, we're doing a new Star Trek. What are the things from previous Star Trek that people need to know, and how do we put that in there in such a way that it's like you're watching that episode and it doesn't feel like you're missing anything, and that's your first season gives you the information that you need that will then move on, and then if you're watching the show you get what you need. But that's the kind of stuff that they need to do, and that's what I think they either want to reboot it completely, or they want it to be a direct continuation where they don't have to explain everything. And that means you do have to go back and watch the original thing to get up to speed on who the characters are and everything. And they need to figure out where that balance is.
Yeah, that's a good point. And we sort of got that with Prodigy, because the whole premise of Prodigy was, here are a group of young characters that have zero knowledge of what Star Trek is, what the Federation is, any of that stuff, but they are going to be put in this situation and then learn those things as they go. And with them, the audience has the opportunity to learn those things as well. So we're shooting this toward a new audience, which did not work, because it was still on Paramount Plus, and it was still only going to be the same people already subscribing who were going to be watching it, and half of them didn't. Anyway, but that was at least a fairly successful attempt at doing exactly what you're saying. And
it also needs marketing
behind
it.
What's that?
Because, all right, so here's the thing, and I've pulled the actual news article to prove my case on this. When Prodigy was originally announced, it was said it was an educational show for kids. Okay, so that was the thing that was put out there into the ether. A lot of people didn't watch Prodigy, and I think that's the problem, is that they didn't see how good Prodigy actually was. Because once I found out it wasn't an educational show, because I didn't watch the first season either, because I was like, well, I don't want to watch an educational show for kids. It's like a Magic School Bus, but with Star Trek. I don't want that, so that's what I thought it was. But then people are like, no, Prodigy is good. And so I watched Prodigy, and I was like, oh yeah, this is actually really good, because adults needed to know, even though it's animated, this is like a legitimate Star Trek series. You should be watching this. And they weren't marketing it get to kids really well either. I think it was on Cartoon Network or something, or Nickelodeon. Or
they didn't get the episodes until like a year after it had been on Paramount Plus, and so there wasn't that momentum to get everybody to watch it at the same time.
Yeah, they also trickled it out like 5 episodes at a time on Paramount Plus. Right. And instead of just having a big Nickelodeon launch like they should have, and they didn't have toys until after the show was canceled.
Yeah.
And it's the same kind of thing they did with Starfleet Academy, where, as you say, it was more like a 90210 or a CW show, but it wasn't on the CW where that audience might find it. It was on Paramount Plus, where the Star Trek fans and people who like the Kevin Costner Western shows are.
Right.
That's another one of my soapboxes. The studios need to stop from making their stuff exclusive to their own streamer.
Right.
Like, put stuff on network again, put stuff on cable channels. You can have exclusive series to your streamer, but that's not a one size fits all thing for every kind of series. And you need to get in multiple audiences. And I hope that they learn that lesson, because I don't think that this whole system has been working.
Mm-mm.
And they did put Discovery on broadcast. Like a year and a half or something after the season 1, they put it out on broadcast.
Right, because of COVID, they were low on content, so they pulled Discovery and showed it on broadcast.
Right. Yeah. And I don't know its performance record in that format, but I would be interested in looking back and seeing. I mean, it clearly, I don't think, brought any new viewers, any new subscribers to Paramount Plus. But
well, yeah, I heard so many people say that they weren't going to pay for CBS All Access or then later Paramount Plus just for Star Trek, and so that was one of their problems, shooting themselves in the foot of a popularity of these series was you had to pay to play.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it would almost be better to have the show widely in release and then have the additionals and bonus content and exclusives. Like, it's always kind of funny to me, like the Ready Room would be available on YouTube where everybody can see it, but the show he's talking about is exclusive to Paramount Plus, right? It seems to me like that should be the reverse.
Yeah. There's a lot of Food Network and HGTV do things where it's like their first run show is going to be Thursday night at whatever time, streaming the next day on their platform. So they're doing both models, and maybe Star Trek should do that, or whatever. Maybe Star Trek should be making new episodes, and whoever wants it, whether it be NBC or whatever, make it for that platform, and then it goes to your streaming service the next day where it can live forever. It can be that ephemeral sort of presence on a broadcast network, but get those viewers that are, out there, get that ad revenue, get all that stuff, but also get your subscriber revenue from having it available on your own platform. Don't keep it behind that wall where only your existing audience is going to see it.
Well, the thing that was even more ridiculous about Star Trek was it's like, okay, we're going to make this exclusive to our streamer. We're not going to put it on broadcast. We're not going to put it on cable, but then we'll sell discs, which I'm all for. Believe me, I'm a huge physical media person, but it's like, you realize that people, they're just going to wait for the discs if they don't want to pay for Paramount Plus, and they're just going to watch it that way. So it's still like a thing where it's like they don't think out their strategy either and how they're doing this. But Paramount, please continue releasing discs, because I pay for the streamer, so it's okay. Give me my discs.
So this is got a comment here from somebody that I think we had a couple of weeks ago on our show for the first time, and I think I still don't know how to pronounce the name, but Jarl Thunder says, but how do we activate our core users if we don't leverage exclusive content to optimize monetization and deliver shareholder value? I mean, that is exactly it.
Yeah.
Question of our time.
Star Trek and Star Wars have the benefit that they could have a series that's exclusive, whatever your premiere series is, that could be exclusive, so like Picard, for instance. Picard is a series that, because people love Picard, may have been enough to draw people to pay for Paramount Plus just to watch Picard, right?
Yeah.
But then you could put your other Star Trek shows in other places to sort of show like, hey, look at all this other stuff we're doing, and hopefully we can reel you in by saying, and hey, we got some other Star Trek on our platform, why don't you go on that too? And so I think that's probably the strategy to use. It's harder when it's just one show, right? Like, because it's like, oh, how do we utilize this one? But for Star Wars and Star Trek, I feel like they should be like playing the field.
Yeah, I agree. Put Strange New Worlds out on CBS or whatever and run Picard. And then when you do that, show a commercial for your exclusive content on your platform. So, subscribe to Paramount Plus, watch all the Strange New Worlds you want, but at the same time, watch this other show that we've got. Our new friend is actually David Whitehead, who met Chuck at Stellar Fest and knows Nick from Dragon Con.
Yep. What's up,
hey, David?
Nice to have you on board, buddy.
Yeah. Now, I mean, speaking of having a lot of shows, Star Trek has done it where there was that one year where there was more than one Star Trek episode a week over the course of the 52.
Yeah.
Like we were having trouble talking about them, but also Marvel has done the same sort of thing. We're having a lot of shows. Star Wars has done the same sort of thing, having a lot of shows, and that's been a reason given for some of their box office performance is that people get so accustomed to getting the Marvel or Star Wars experience at home, but also generally just for Star Trek. I mean, is it watering down the brand that there's no like next gen, right? There's no premiere Star Trek show when it's one of 4 or 5, depending on what year the release schedule falls on.
Right.
All right. So yeah, I can't put myself in the head of these people that like talk about Marvel and say like, oh, it's homework now to watch all this stuff. And I'm like, well, no, if it's all good, why are we calling it homework? I like watching all the content. But with Star Trek, I don't think it's actually watering down the brand to have more. Now, of course, we don't have a film release of Star Trek to compare it against like we do with Star Wars and Marvel, where we can actually see like, oh, like there has been, some pain points. My personal belief is that most of the films that have suffered on both of those sides sort of deservedly suffered because the films themselves were not great. I can think of one outlier where I felt like, oh, this one didn't deserve like what happened to it.
I can think of Star Wars films that did well financially that were not great in the past. Well, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was thinking of the Converse.
Okay. Right.
But Star Trek, I mean, I feel like having multiple shows and being able to do different tones and different things with multiple shows has actually been one of the great things about Star Trek in this era.
Yeah. And I enjoy it. Don't get me wrong. I'll watch every Star Trek show that comes along. But they need
even Scouts.
I no. Trust me. I've watched almost every episode of Scouts.
Oh my god.
But I mean, there was a time though when you throw Star Wars on a marquee and you got a line, right? And and obviously that's not the case today. Is there a way to get back to that?
Well, you know what? When Star Wars started in 1977 and then the next 2 installments, that was what Star Wars was. You got a comic from Marvel, you got some novelizations and things like that. But the thing was that it's sort of, and it was kind of like a franchise out of its own time because it really harkened back to those Buster Crabbe kind of like movie serials, the ones that were playing on Saturday morning at the cinema, that you would get like the big fast-paced storytelling. It was very much an homage to those kind of things, and it just resonated in a way that I don't think a lot of the newer Star Wars movies or series have done. Like they sort of don't have that thing. Like, is it fun to watch? It often isn't. And I have that problem with a lot of Marvels. One of the reasons that I loved Guardians so much, and even something like the Eternals, which was a flop, they felt like a comic book. And I
love the Eternals.
I do too. I thought it was great. And you get that sort of with the Ant-Man movies. They're fun. They feel like a comic book should feel. The Tom Holland Spider-Man movies are the same. A lot of them don't, and that's fine. You can go to have something that has a different tone, a different voice, but they're, you have to understand that they're maybe not gonna perform the same way. I don't know. But if you do too much of the other thing, you lose what's unique about that franchise.
Yeah, with Star Wars specifically, I think the reason why the prequels and then the sequels, which I don't feel like were anywhere near as good as the original trilogy did so well, though, is because we had the buy-in of Lucas originally conceived this as a 9-episode series. And so I think a lot of people who loved that original trilogy still shelled out for episodes 1, 2, 3, and then 7, 8, and 9, because there was a sense of completion. I've now seen the entirety, but with all this stuff that's happened since then, there's no longer any, oh, well, I watched what they're now calling the Skywalker, series or whatever. I think that, but the Skywalker saga, that's the term. Skywalker saga. We watched that. And so now there's no longer a need to continue with any new movies or new shows or whatever that they do. And so people are judging those on their own merit. And that's where I feel like, Disney is just sort of milking the Star Wars name and isn't, I think some of the shows have been really good, but I think the movies that we've gotten in the Disney era have not been anywhere near as good as, the original trilogy.
Yeah,
sure. But I think several of them are at least as good as the prequels.
I would say they're all better than the prequels.
Right.
That's the lowest
were at least bad
bar.
in a fun way, though. I mean, we were thinking about that and making fun of that for years. That was just material.
But it's just weird now to go to see a new Star Wars movie and there's 3 people in the theater on the second weekend.
Okay,
but that's kind of the theater at the moment.
Well, if you're talking about specifically about Mandalorian, like that was really like, okay, well, here's the next season of your show, but you got to come to the theater to watch it. And that's not going to draw people like any other independent, like, this is a brand new Star Wars story. It's going to draw the people who are and still invested enough in the show to come and watch more of the show. And that's what we got. We've got more of the show. I enjoyed it, but I liked the show. People who are not as invested in the show got no reason to go to the theater.
We just talked about that on my show, and the thing is, that was a movie that didn't try at all to get in new people. Like, there was no explanation anywhere who these characters are, what's happening. It's just like, this is made only for people who love the show and want to keep going. So that's why I've been thinking about my comments about comics and about how comics, like they figure out how to hit you right at the beginning with everything you need to know, and then just go forward.
But we got that with Downton Abbey too. I mean, the Downton Abbey movie was for people who already knew the series. Anyway, David Whitehead says, I'd throw Andor seasons 1 and 2 and Rogue One up against the original any day. And I agree with that. I thought Andor was amazing, and Rogue One may be the best Star Wars movie ever made. I just think it's incredible. And it's not as much fun.
It's a bummer.
I disagree.
So no. I never. We're not going to get into that anyway. Matt Sweatman says, but now there are people who love the prequels but hate the sequels. Not coincidentally, they were young when the prequels came out. Sure, of course.
I've encountered this strange thing myself. Yes.
Yeah.
Everything that came out when I was 14 is great. Everything that came out after I was 14 is new and stupid.
Yeah. they were mad about Keanu Mundi's birthday. So, I mean, who knows? But we're sort of up against time, guys. I mean, I think this has been a lot of fun, and I'm glad that we were able to sort all that out. So hopefully they'll watch it and carry on with a good strategy.
Hopefully the execs were listening to our show.
That's right. Yeah. I think we got it all worked out.
That's right.
But thank you guys very much for joining us. And this is certainly a topic that I'm sure will come up again, and I'd love to revisit because I feel like we're just at the tip of the iceberg with these things. But Nick, where can people find more of you?
So I do a webcomic called Treading Ground. It is it's a raunchy rom-com about broke people. You can get that at treadingground.com. Everything else is nickthewright.com, and I'm at nickthewright on all the socials.
And how about you, Nathan?
You can find me at 42cast.com and pretty much any social media at 42cast. You can find the 42cast and engage me there.
And how about you, Alan?
CosmicCreative.com. KOZMIC creative.com, where you can check out the books that I have written and the other podcasts that I do and the film that I'm working on and lots of fun things.
And you can find me and Veronica, as always, at feltnerdy.com or feltnerdy or feltnerdy and dirty across social media, or Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern going live with Monkeying Around, a podcast about the monkeys. And Alan, I'm going to be out of town next week. What are you doing on the show?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Did we? I don't even know if we came up. Oh, yes. I know what we're doing next week, because guess what? Next week, our regular broadcast night falls on July 9th. What is that date? 7-9. We're going to do a whole episode about 7 of 9. That's right. I'm so glad you reminded me of that, so I could say that, because that's fun. Yeah. So everybody join us next. Yeah. Join us next week at 8 p.m. Eastern, where we talk about 7 of 9 and her journey over the course of, and where her journey might go from here. Who knows? So we'll see everybody next week. And until then, everybody keep trekking.
Bye.
Bye.